We're live.
Luna didn't like the the fucking Lightning McQueen.
Ka-chow! She's like,
I was like, ka-chow! It's either that or the ka-chuga.
You want to say something to everybody before we start the podcast?
Luna, why don't you do us all a favor and fuck right off?
Don't bite this. This is worth more than you.
He's not joking.
She's like, okay, I'll grab my bone then. What's up, everybody? All 0 people in our stream. But hey, you know, we got to stream to somebody one day. I don't want to play.
Well, it sounds like you said people were going back and watching it last time.
Yeah, we're getting
watching
people
the
to
recordings.
watch the recordings. I think our YouTube videos have some views. I don't know how much they actually watch, but then I've noticed some of our YouTube videos have like weird ass comments on them. Like very weird comments.
Do these end up on YouTube?
Yeah, so
Okay.
so like when this is done, I go into like a video producer and I just upload our whole VOD. So our last VOD, I did the stream ending screen and forgot to end the stream. So it was just up for like 2 hours. But good thing I had unhooked all of our mics and everything.
Oh,
Because it was just me in here, probably screaming at my TV. So I was like, holy shit, we streamed for 3 hours. And I was like,
yeah, I really hope you don't do that one time and then you're in here beating off like watching porn out of your speakers. And
no, I don't do that in here. There's
Why not?
Because there's a work computer here.
Just shut it and put it, like, stuff it away somewhere.
Nah, they're probably still watching.
Put it in a fucking bag.
Just hanging out the window.
Yeah.
Someone goes walking by. Why is there a bag out the window? I don't know. That's that dude's like masturbating.
You put it in like an RFID blocking bag.
I can't. I think the baby's room for. I think it's new people that moved in is right here. So I got to be respectful to the neighbors.
Oh well, you can put on headphones. You don't have to play out.
Yeah, but if you're just like really going to town, might be shaking the room, table monitors.
What kind of masturbating are you doing?
The good kind.
Okay, I'm not gonna ask any more questions. Should we
Bro,
fire up the?
I don't do that. Okay, I'm a man of Christ.
Okay, kind of like our Vegas trip was a church retreat.
Yep.
Yeah.
My mom goes, "How was Vegas?" And I was like, "It was a church retreat." And she goes, "I'm not going to ask anymore." And she's like, "I know you probably did things that we heavily disapprove of." I was like, "I'll just tell you everything I did." And she goes, "Great. Now I have a drug addict." And I was like, "Better than having herpes." She goes, "Whatever."
Whatever.
All right, we're going live.
Should we get it popping?
Yeah.
Brand new whip just hopped in.
Well, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another phenomenal episode of Just Browsin. Matthew, along with Zach today, and we are going to bring you the greatest movie franchise of all time episode today. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about Harry Potter. And yes, Zach is going to be quiet the whole time.
Yeah, this is a change of pace where I'm actually just going to leave my mic on and then just leave the room and go home. And Matt's just going to talk about Harry Potter for the next 2 hours.
Yes.
So enjoy.
So
I don't know what he's going to say, just like you don't know what he's going to say. I'll listen whenever he uploads it.
So just like some, pre-context to this, Zach and I were talking about what we wanted to do this episode on this morning. And then he goes about and says he needs to start a Harry Potter marathon, sooner rather than later, rewatch all the movies.
Yeah, meaning like sometime in the next couple months.
So meanwhile, he says that, and we all work from home, so it's, people have TVs readily available. Me being a slight Harry Potter fan, I have all of them on my Amazon account. So I fired them up, and I'm already almost done with the third movie. But, it's been like 14 hours since we had our conversation, so.
That was also during a work day, though. I would like to clarify.
Yeah, but I've seen these movies so many times that I can play it in the background, and the movie's playing in my head. It's like I can get all my work done, and I'm still watching the movie by not actually watching. It's like Band of Brothers.
See, you're better than me, because if there's a movie on, I'm
course.
totally distracted. I can't do anything other than watch the movie, basically. Even if it's like a show, like if we just put on like a random sitcom that I've already seen before, and I'll be cooking dinner or something, I still find myself getting distracted and just watching the TV. I'm like really bad about it. If I have to get stuff done, I got to turn the TV completely off.
See, I used to be that way, but then I found like I work better. If there's nothing going on, I find myself more distracted because I'm trying to find something to distract me. So if there's background noise going on, and that's why I usually watch something that I've seen so many times before, because then I'm not like glued to it. I'm not super interested in it because I know what's going on. I can hear it.
See, that
and
trick doesn't work for me though.
But do you listen to like music or podcasts?
Yeah, well, I was just about to say that I think that has like podcasts and music have replaced that for me. Like if I'm gonna be cleaning or cooking or whatever, I podcast or I listen to music.
You're just like cooking and you're watching a movie and you're just like this, and it's like an hour and a half later you just hear.
Exactly. Like I can't have Avengers Endgame on while I'm trying to make dinner. It's not gonna work.
The house burns down. You're like, well, I watched the whole movie though.
So a lot of times, like when me and Ty are cooking, we'll throw on like New Girl or Friends or Fresh Prince of Bel-Air or something like,
you've already seen,
some sitcom. Yeah, and even that is kind of distracting to me. If it's just me by myself and I'm cooking, I just turn on the speaker. I like hook up my phone to a Bluetooth speaker and then just listen to a podcast or listen to music because it's like something I can listen to and consume while I'm doing other things. And that's the only way I can get things done. That's
where I can use movies and TV shows like that. I
Yeah.
can use
See,
them as an audio track
be
because
fine,
I've
like,
seen
if
them
I-
so much.
Like if I was in the other room cleaning and you had a movie on in here and I could just hear it, that'd be fine. But if
No.
I'm in the room and I can see the screen, I'm fucked. Like
See-
I'm so distracted.
See, that's where I'm different. You know, in college, I know like Megan, she would flip it to like ABC Family, and the Harry Potter used to be on ABC
Dude,
Family
they
all
love
the
showing the
time.
Harry Potter marathons.
And it would be like, you know, Prisoner of Azkaban. And I'm sitting there going, shut that shit off. If you want to watch them, I'll go upstairs and grab the DVDs.
And we're starting from the beginning.
And we're starting from the beginning. and I remember she was always like, why can't you just watch the movie? And it's like Harry Potter's like the only one I really do this with, like hardcore. I just can't. I can't jump into the third movie. I'm like, no, we're going to watch this.
I think that says a lot about how good the story is. If it's like Lord of the Rings or Star Wars or Harry Potter, where if you come in on like the fifth one or the eighth one or something, it's
hard when they're long.
You're like
series.
I want to see. It's hard to just jump right in without being like, I want to. You're not really like totally invested unless you've been in from the beginning, kind of thing. Even though you've seen it, however many times, you still feel like you need to go start from the beginning, go through like all the trials and tribulations, and then see their journey to the end instead of just hopping in the middle and being like, oh yeah,
right,
here's what they're doing here. You know, it's like. But then you start thinking about like, oh yeah, but what about in that first one or in the second one when they did such and such? Like, I don't know. That's just how I am. I'm kind of the same way. I remember Sam telling me one time that he and his buddy were in college, they were having some sort of like a lazy Sunday or whatever, and TNT was doing the Star Wars marathon because TNT likes doing that.
They always did those.
And they sat there and watched the prequel trilogy like all day because it was they came in at Phantom Menace like towards the beginning and just sat there all day long watching Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith. But it was all on TNT, so it's all like commercials.
They're all like
the whole
3
time.
hours long.
Yeah. So he's like, dude, it took us literally like all day long to watch those 3 movies. And he goes, I don't know why I did that. I own the prequel movies. Like,
if
you
I
could just
own it,
pop
I'm
them
not-
in and cut out all the commercials, but you just sat there and was just like, oh, I'm just going to do this, I guess.
If I own it, I'm putting it on.
Yeah.
If I want to watch it and I own that movie, I'm just putting it on because I don't want commercials.
I used to not think about that, but my roommate in college pointed it out to me one time because I think Goodfellas was on or something, and it was like around dinner time. Maybe we were cooking or we had just brought food home or whatever, and I'm like, I just turned on the TV for something to watch while I'm eating, and Goodfellas is on, and I'm like, oh, I love Goodfellas. And my roommate was like, see, he said the same thing. He's like, I don't watch movies on TV that I own because why would you watch a movie with commercials when you could just put it in and not watch it with commercials? And I was like, you know what? That's a really good point because if you think about it, in your head, you're going, well, I don't want to like get up, get the DVD or like even the VHS if it's back in the day, put it in, start it from the beginning, get it all set up, and then press play.
Because in your mind, you think by the time you go through that,
you
the
think
movie's
that's
gonna be over.
right. You think that's taking so long, but really, in reality, you're going to save yourself so much time.
Yep.
Because if you just sit there and watch it on TV, it's going to take like 2 hours longer than it should to watch that movie, just with all the fucking commercials. So it really is just worth being like, nope, stop it right now. If I want to watch something while I'm eating, let's just put in Goodfellas. I have it right here.
I also hate some movies, and we've gotten far from Harry Potter, but some movies, they put like the full uncut versions on TV sometimes.
Yeah.
So there's extra shit
already
in there than what
extended,
you're thinking should be in there. And then, they cut words out so that, they go to say shit and they're like, and then it's just like, shoot. And you're like, that doesn't, it's a whole different actor saying shoot.
It takes you out of it.
It's just throw the movie in.
I think I mentioned this to you one
and
time.
And you can pause it too.
Yeah, exactly. You can pause it and go take a piss or whatever. One thing, I think I mentioned this to you one time. One movie that really confuses me that they continue to show on TV, which I can't wrap my head around, is Deadpool. Why would you show a movie like Deadpool on TV? It's rated R, and he cusses literally the entire movie.
Right.
And it's super gory. Like, all of the violence is very gory.
The whole point of that movie
and
is
then they
just
put it on
extremely
TV and then
inappropriate.
just like give you the watered down version of
Yeah.
it. And you're like...
Because people will watch
Like,
it.
I'm watching Deadpool because he can say fuck and he's going to cut people's heads off.
Yeah.
Like, that's why I'm watching Deadpool. Not for, like, this, G-rated version in case some middle schooler's watching it. Yeah, it's like, why is this movie on TV,
Yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. Anyway, let's get back to Harry Potter because that's what we set out to do.
I'm so excited.
How are you feeling? This is a big moment for you because we've done our MCU bracket podcast. So there's a whole episode on the MCU. We've done a whole episode on Star Wars back on May the 4th. And now we have arrived at our official Harry Potter podcast.
It works out, too, because a lot of the Harry Potters were all released the first couple weeks of July. And here we are and going on what? Almost the third week in July. I guess technically, yeah, we're in the third week of July. So
yeah, it's already the 19th.
I'm stoked because this is like, if you haven't listened, go back and listen to our movie franchise brackets. Mm-hmm. This is my favorite.
Yeah,
movie.
Spoiler alert for that. For those,
no spoiler alert. That was a long time ago.
Those series of podcasts. It was a very long time ago. But yeah, Matt picked this as his favorite franchise in our 64 movie franchise bracket we filled
It wasn't
out,
even
so
close. Like, as
it's
soon
been
as
a
we
long
made
time
the
coming.
bracket, that was in.
Yeah.
And now
I was
finally here to discuss it.
I was thinking about it right before I came over here. I was thinking back to that bracket, and I was thinking about these big monolithic pop culture, like movie/TV show properties. And I was thinking about, like, the Giants. And we pretty much had all of the Giants as our one seeds. It was, like, Lord of the Rings/Hobbit franchise.
Star Wars.
Harry Potter, Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Harry Potter.
Yep.
You're going to be pretty hard-pressed to find any other franchises that are more deserving of a one seed than those four right there.
Well, so I think, like, one thing with Harry Potter, and this, I think this episode is going to be heavily focused on the movies because I haven't read the books in probably... Well, let's see, how old am I right now?
You're about to get older here in a couple days.
I'm about to get older here in a few days. I probably haven't read a Harry Potter book in 12 to 13 years. So my book knowledge, I need to reread them. I have all of them at my parents' house. I need to reread them. I just haven't brought them over here.
I'm the exact same way.
So this is going to be a heavy movie.
Yeah, I plan on rereading them soon, and I think we've both read the books. It's just been so long that...
And there's so many details in there that you don't get in the movies that's just like, well, that was pretty important.
Yeah.
But then again, it's like I can't remember all those details 12 years later.
From what I remember, though, the movies do a really, really good job of adapting the books.
Yeah.
They don't leave much stuff out.
Well, that's what happens when you have a author who is...
finishing their series.
Well, not only that, but they're homeless, living in a van under a bridge, writing this to becoming wealthier than the Queen of England.
Yeah.
Like,
I thought you were going to say this is what happens when the writer has actually finished their series as the movies are being, or as the adaptation is being made.
I wonder if she would have finished them if they weren't as popular as they were. Because, like some cultures, like...
I think she probably would have.
I know these are a lot more modern books, and because the movies were released in 2001, 2002, 2004, 2005, 2007, 2009, 2010, 2011, with the books coming out in 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2003, 2005, and 2007. So they're all super, super modern movies, and well, not super, super modern, but they're all very modern. I didn't realize
the first book had come out in 97. Wow.
Yeah.
I thought for sure they were all like the movies and the books were like 2000 and on. But
no, 97, but then, 97, 98, 99. So she had, the first three, like, she probably wrote them all in one book and then split them up into different things. Because you got to think, there's no way she wrote one book and then, release it in 97 while releasing her next book a year later. You got to think she probably just continued to write the story at the same time, and then was like, "I'm going to release them a year apart." Because
I don't think they were all done, but she was definitely as the first one was turned in, being edited, being printed, being released.
She's probably
she was
3/4 of the
cranking
way
out
through.
number 2, and then the same thing when number 2 gets put through the
process. Because these books
process.
are long.
Yeah, and I think it was one of those things where it's like any sort of series that you read. Well, it's like most of them. Some series start off, the first book is like 900 pages or whatever, but the first one here is like a regular size book, like 350 pages, something like that, for Sorcerer's Stone. And she releases it, it becomes this sensation, and then what happened is she probably had an idea of where she wanted to take the series and like the overarching storyline and how many books she wanted to flesh it out into, but then it became as popular as it did, and I'm sure the publisher was like, hey, do you have more where this came from? And she's like, yeah.
So yeah,
and then it evolves into what it eventually becomes.
309 pages was book 1.
Right. So like a pretty normal sized book. But then by Goblet of Fire, I think, is when I remembered it first becoming like this big. I got the hardback of Goblet of Fire, and it's
Goblet of
huge.
Fire was 734.
Exactly. So a big difference, 400-page difference when you reach book 4. Because the first 3 are actually pretty normal size.
Well, and that one was released in 2000. So you had 97, 98, 99, and 2000. So she had all 4 of her first books released within a year of each other.
Yeah. That's a lot of writing.
Not each other, but in a year of the previous.
And it's one of those things. I've kind of read into this too because I've done a lot of research into like the publishing industry and just writing in general. Because if she would have come to her publisher with a 700-page book right off the bat for book 1, probably wouldn't have happened that way. They probably would have edited that shit down.
How are you going to adapt or like have an audience jump right in on a 700-page book?
If you're a completely unknown author, they're not going to be like, sure, we're going to print your 700 or 800-page book that no one's ever heard of you, no one knows what the story is.
Right.
There's zero interest in it so far. They're not going to do that. So 300 pages, yeah, it's a perfect length for a normal adult level, young adult level novel. Let's get everyone's beak wet.
And it's not a hard reading book either. Like,
right.
Like The Hobbit, I don't know, did you ever read The Hobbit?
No, I want to.
That's a tough read for younger kids.
Yeah.
Harry Potter isn't like that.
I think she definitely benefited from the fact that this is not like Song of Ice and Fire is like adult fantasy fiction. It's very gruesome and brutal. Harry Potter is like young adult fiction. Right. So she benefited from the fact that she has this already, if it becomes popular, she has this built-in audience of like tens of thousands of middle school and high school students across the nation.
Well, and
you know what I mean?
And one thing I was going to say,
and adults.
like regarding the movies, and this is, I'll just jump in. This is why some people don't like them, is they don't like the child actors, because the first. And
I normally don't. I'm normally one of those people.
The first movie or two, you can sit, if you just critiquing the actors themselves. The 11-year-old actors back in 2001 or whenever they were shooting this, you critique them, you go, yeah, your acting sucks. Your CGI is a little off. But then you have to think to yourself, they're like, the story is based around 11 and 12-year-olds at this time.
Yeah.
You can't cast...
There's pretty much no other way to do it.
Like right now, you look at a TV show or a movie, and as a high schooler, they're casting a 34-year-old to play a high schooler. And it's just like, I get it because the acting is better.
Yeah.
But... she truly, I don't know how much input she had on the movies, I guess, but they really stuck to, we're going to hire 11-year-olds and they're going to be our cast all the way through, which besides Dumbledore, every main character was the exact same person through every single movie. And Dumbledore would have been, but he passed away. Right. The actor who played him passed away.
I think that's honestly one of the silently amazing things about these movies is the fact that they knocked it out of the park so well with the main 3 actors for Harry, Ron, and Hermione. Because imagine if this would have happened. Imagine they cast the same 3 that we know as Harry, Ron, and Hermione today, but they do 2 movies. They do through Chamber of Secrets, and then they all won out. And then they recast Harry, Ron, and Hermione and keep going with the series. It would not have worked as well as it did. The fact that they got all 3 of them to commit from the time they were 11 to, what were they, 20-something?
Yeah, I mean, the last movie came out in 2011, and they're
so 10 years, I guess.
Years older than us, for the most part. So yeah,
they were 20 or 21 by the time they finished these movies. That's a whole decade of their life that these people were asking them to commit to one role.
But
granted, it's a gigantic role, but still, the fact that they kept everyone together and it was the same, you watch. It
was a true storyline.
Okay, as I'm reading the books, these kids are getting older and older and older, and now they're in their 5th year or whatever. And then by the time you get to the 5th movie, you're like, yeah, they look like they're in their 5th year now. Like, it makes sense.
Well, I think it, like, you know, they're supposed to be 17, I believe, in the last movie. Or, you know, 17 or 18 in year 7.
So kind of like you are when you're graduating high school.
Right. This is supposed to be like a high school. Yeah, the actors look older, but, I mean, they're not going to be able to shoot a movie every single year for these because it just takes...
time.
It takes time. But they don't look too old that they can't play the roles. They look just old enough to perfectly fill the roles.
Right.
So, as far as, like, people hating on, like, child actors and stuff in these movies, I sit there and I go, these movies are just... I mean, they're absolute masterpieces in terms of how they went from the book to the movie without cutting too much detail, but having to cut too much detail at the same time.
Well, I was going to say, to your point about child actors, I'm normally one of those people to where if I'm watching a movie and it's centered around, you know, child characters and the child actors are not very good, it really distracts me from the story, and it bothers me. And I firmly believe that on average, there are exceptions like the child actors from these movies. On average, most child actors are just not as good as their adult counterparts. They just aren't.
Right.
They're just not as good at conveying emotion, and that's fine. Kids are not as good at conveying emotion as adults are. That's just part of the process of growing up and becoming emotionally mature and all that kind of stuff. But this movie, or these movies, I did not have that feeling at all. Like the acting, like you said, in the first one or the first two. No, even now. It doesn't bother me at all. I mean, it's like a little bit cheesy, and you can tell, like, oh, yeah, like, they're not the best actors in the world, but, like, I get over it by the time the third movie comes around because now they're, like, young adults, and they're starting to become a little bit better about...
The third movie is really when it starts to... Yeah. Okay, so I'll just start with my worst movie, or my least favorite.
Well, I guess we should say we're gonna rank them.
Yeah, right? let's rank them, because we keep going on random tangents not about Harry Potter.
This is why... I wanted to rank them because I figured we could do plenty of ranting, but we need to, like, structure it around our rankings. All right, well, let's
structure this around the worst episode being Chamber of Secrets. And I feel like that's probably 95% of people's worst episode is Chamber of Secrets.
You actually had that as your worst? I had that as my worst as well.
It is my least favorite movie.
I thought I was alone in that, but maybe I'm not.
It is my least favorite movie.
Yeah, it's my least favorite.
It's not boring, but it's like really dark, but it's not really dark. Like
it's right before it, because Prisoner of Azkaban, I think, is when it starts getting really dark. Like it starts getting the stakes become pretty fucking serious.
Right.
No pun intended with Sirius Black, like what I did there. But yeah, I don't. And also, apart from like all of the actual like storyline and movie criticism I could give for that one. Not a big fan of spiders, and it really fucks me up every time I watch that movie, and I forget that there's like a giant part of that movie that involves around spiders, and a lot of them, and then big ones. Really hard for me to watch. So that's not. I did not use that as an excuse to put it as my least favorite movie. It just really is my least favorite out of the whole series. I just don't.
I just feel like it drags on. Like it's one of the longer movies, and it's just constantly like, I don't know. To me, it wasn't like a full letdown, but as far as Harry Potter movies go, it was a constant letdown to me.
Because that's the one where you have him kind of uncovering the secret of Tom Riddle, right, in the diary.
Through Tom Riddle's diary.
And then in the Chamber of Secrets, there's the big serpent and everything, right?
Right, the basilisk.
Okay. Yeah, the basilisk, yeah. Okay. And then he speaks Parseltongue, you find out, and all that kind of stuff. All right, okay.
Yeah, so... I mean, there's a lot of important information as the whole movie franchise
if you think about it, it's actually pretty crucial to the rest of the story. It's
extremely crucial because, you know, as you move along and you find out that Tom Riddle made, you know, the Horcruxes, as my dog bites my arm off, you know, Harry destroyed one his second year within the diary. That was the first one that he had come across and destroyed.
Just unknowingly.
Yeah. And, you know, then in later movies, they go back down there because the Basilisk Fang is important to destroying more, you know, the Horcruxes. And, you know, it's a lot bigger part of the movie than anything. And, you know, you find out that the Sword of Gryffindor, which was used to kill the Basilisk, had the Basilisk Basilisk. Totally butchered that one because we're trying to grab this dog. But it had the venom, so it could destroy the Horcruxes as well. So looking back on it, as far as information goes into the movies, it was extremely important.
Yeah.
But when you're watching it, like especially for the first time, you're not like, well, that was great. You're like, it wasn't bad, but not like super
Especially,
stoked.
I think just coming on the heels of the first one was so magical, and it brings you into this world that you had never previously seen that was so captivating. It just felt like, I don't know, it's kind of this weird middle child between, like I said, Prisoner of Azkaban starts getting real adult and real serious and dark. And the first one is still really childlike and filled with wonder and very awe-inspiring and magical. And Chamber of Secrets is kind of like trying to be both. It's a little bit trying to be childlike and magical, but a little bit trying to be adult and scary and stuff. And I don't know, it ends up coming off like I just don't really enjoy going back to revisit that one.
It's kind of
I don't know why.
You're kind of introduced into death in the first one, but the second one they really, really show you like, people died during this whole thing. The first one they're like, hey, Harry was dog, I swear.
It also is, I think it's the first one that makes you realize Hogwarts is super unsafe to have kids in it.
Yeah.
Like, there needs to
Fluffy,
be way more security in Hogwarts because there's just like, they're just letting kids wander around in the corridors of this dark and scary castle at night, and any fucking corridor or like door they open up could unleash some like giant beast that could eat them. And like no one's guarding them, no one's telling them like don't go in this room.
They did say the third corridor is off limits at the start,
I guess that's true.
Start of the term.
Still though, there needs to be a little more security than that. Like please put up a rope or something and with some signs.
Well, the door was locked.
Hey, there's a giant fucking serpent in here that will eat you if you.
Well, but see, no one was able to find the Chamber of Secrets.
But they know it's in there. You know what I mean?
They don't know where it is.
I'm still saying it's an unsafe place to hold classes. It's my only point.
Oh, you can't just move Hogwarts, all right?
I feel like they could. I mean, Hogwarts is a super dope place, but also just very fucking dangerous.
Just because there's magic doesn't mean they can just up and move a castle.
No, I mean just move it just go to a different location,
like a different castle.
Have Hogwarts be there, but then go to like a building that doesn't have serpents lurking in the basement.
Just go to a big
or
open
trolls,
room
or giant 3-headed dogs, or massive spiders, or
the spider wasn't in
teachers
the castle,
with
though.
dark wizards on the back of their heads. Any of that kind of stuff. Not great.
All right, well now you're just saying that the whole series isn't great.
No, I'm just saying that it's really dangerous to have children
learning
like potions.
Jumping ahead, you got to think in the final movie, chapter year 7, part 2, Battle of Hogwarts. That's where Voldemort and his forces literally go to kill all of Harry and his 17-year-old classmates.
True.
Which, while it's in my head, because and again, the book might have said this, I can't remember. Where the fuck are all these parents? All these parents that are magic born,
there's some of them, but there's not nearly as many as there are kids there.
Right, but like Hermione, her parents aren't magical, so I wouldn't expect them to be there. But
like Ron's parents are like the only ones there, basically.
Right, and then there's some that work in the ministry, but it's like, where the hell are all the other parents?
They're just kind of leaving the fight for the world up to like a bunch of junior and seniors.
They're like,
in
we already fought them. We don't want to fight them again. You go ahead and die. We'll stay at home.
You guys got this.
It just is one of those things. I'm like, they could have been there. It's not that hard. But hey.
Also, the adults who are on Voldemort's side, kind of assholes for just storming think about it. That'd be like a bunch, like an army of
Chuck E. Cheese,
full-blown adults charging like Thunderidge High School with a bunch of like AKs and shit, just against like random fucking students. Like, hey,
all right, that's a really bad analogy.
Yeah, I guess you're right. They got a little dark.
Let's just say
bad metaphor.
Let's say a bunch of adults storming Chuck E. Cheese with $500 in tokens to overthrow the $20 in tokens of kids.
Not sure if that one works either. We're struggling with our analogies here.
It's a little bit safer than your analogy.
Anyway, that's your least favorite.
So, Chamber of Secrets is my least favorite. And then, again, I don't dislike any of these movies. This is like the hardest thing to come through. But I would have to say, the Sorcerer's Stone would probably be my second least favorite.
Dude, me too.
And it's nothing against the movie. I just think as the story goes on, there's a lot more information and, there's not a lot of fluff. It's just like, boom, like you're in the story. You're not... The first one's an introduction into characters. You kind of get an introduction into what's about to happen. Harry's about to fight, Voldemort. That's what this movie franchise is going to be about. So, yeah, I mean, I would have to say the first one. I like that movie. It's great. I think it's my mom's favorite because it's bright. It's joyful. The kids are having fun. Everything seems to be going well. And that's really the only one that is like that. Mm-hmm. Everything else, like you said, with Chamber of Secret, it tries to bring you into this darkness.
Yeah. I think the first one, Sorcerer's Stone, is my second to least favorite as well. I had that ranked 7 out of the 8 for me. For all the reasons you said, I think it's a really good starter for the series, but I think like other series that I have either read or watched, it gets stronger as it goes on.
Yeah.
So I end up liking the later ones more than I do the original. But the original's really good.
Right, there's nothing wrong with them.
It's just kind of tough to go back after watching like the last two and being used to the way the movies are shot and like the stakes that are at play, and then going back to watch the first one and being like, this is very childlike. Well, like the first one is very childlike.
And like, Harry doesn't even know he's a wizard for the first 30 minutes of the first one, and then you get to the last one and you're like, okay, he just defeated the greatest dark wizard of all time. The story just, it really is a good stepping stone to start you into the story. It's just not one that's like super captivating in terms of like, oh, that one scene in, the Sorcerer's Stone.
Huge flex in that movie for Ron basically winning the day by being a master of chess.
Yeah.
Wins a fucking chess match with like some pretty deadly stakes.
After watching Wizard's Chess, so like the old DVDs, like when they would first come out, you could get them, and then inside they'd have like a little pamphlet and you could buy, wands and like necklaces, like
I remember
all that shit.
I remember that.
I wanted the Wizard's Chess set so bad because in my head, this movie came out in 2001.
Yeah.
So I was like right when DVDs came out.
Yeah.
I was 7, 8 years old probably when we got the DVD. I wanted that chess set because I thought that they would sit there and beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
And my mom and dad were like, don't be an idiot.
Yeah.
It's just going to sit in your room and collect dust.
Yeah.
So we never got it, but yeah.
How cool would that be?
Wizard's Chess would be so dope.
That would have gotten a lot of people into chess if we invented chess that could do that.
It's kind of like, and I'm going to,
Knight to E5.
But it's kind of like that chessboard in Star Wars. You got the action figures on the Millennium Falcon that just like rip each other apart, and then you like hit a power button and it goes away. It's just something that when you're a little kid, which we were when this came out, it was so cool. And that whole ending scene when they're going in, when they all go in there, it's just, that's the most action, and you really start to see the brilliance of what each person will bring.
Yeah, exactly.
Hermione is just genius. She's the
she's
spells,
the good student.
Yeah.
She reads a lot and retains information, and
she knows all of her spells, her charms, everything. Yeah. Then you got Ron, he's not book smart, he's not street smart, but when it comes to clutch things that people aren't good at,
like
he's the clutch factor.
He's the sixth man.
Yeah, think about it. In part 1 of the Deathly Hallows, he shows up out of nowhere and saves Harry from drowning in the fucking middle of the woods.
He's hitting the big corner three to go either tie or go ahead.
He misses a lot of open threes.
Yeah. But he hits the clutch ones. He hits the ones that matter.
But yeah, so that would be my second least favorite. And then this might throw some people off, but I would have to go with Prisoner of Azkaban being my third least favorite. Yeah, I just everything after Prisoner of Azkaban just really like.
So you have basically the first 3 are all in your bottom 3.
Right, it goes 2, 1, 3 for my bottom 3 so far.
So I actually have, and again, I didn't overthink, I think 3 through 6 that much. It was really like my number 1 and 2 and my 7 and 8 that I had like relatively strong feelings about. The rest of them were kind of interchangeable, but I had Deathly Hallows Part 1 as my 6th favorite out of the 8.
Well, so for Prisoner of Azkaban, because that's what I'm actually about to finish, later tonight, it's a good movie, and it's like you said, it's that first one where you really get the better acting out of everybody. But I just feel, as far as when you look through it, there's not too much info as far as Harry's fight against Voldemort. It's all about Sirius Black.
It's all about Sirius Black.
And in the movie's sense, 1 and 2 don't lead you into 3 being about some dude named Sirius Black.
Right,
We're under the
right.
impression that Voldemort's like the only dark wizard coming into the 3rd, and now it's all about Sirius Black. So really in 3 there's very few indicators of Voldemort. You do understand and learn more about Harry's parents and their friend group that fought Voldemort the first time, and you start to really understand the Order of the Phoenix without knowing what the Order of the Phoenix is. You can see that formation. More truth comes out. There's just no story going into Voldemort and what Harry is about to encounter, because now you could say 3 is one of the happier ones because he gains his godfather back into his life, and he realizes that there is someone out there that still cares for him, and you can say his quote-unquote family that aren't the fucking Dursleys, because fuck Dudley, fuck Vernon, and fuck Petunia.
Here's my pitch for Prisoner of Azkaban being way better than being in the bottom 3. Dementors? No, not Dementors. Wait, okay. I always get Death Eaters and Dementors confused.
Dementors are the Azkaban guards.
Right. Okay. So Dementors.
And they're terrifying. They're like the first terrifying thing that comes into the
like,
Harry Potter universe.
It's almost like what you imagine death being personified as. Like if death walked in and was like, "Hey, it's your time." That's a Dementor, basically. Dementors. Fucking werewolves.
Yep.
Sirius Black and the whole fake out of him, like you think he's this evil person, but he's actually not. He's like on Harry's side, and he's like this instrumental member of the Order of the Phoenix. I had one more thing I was going to say about it. Anyway, Prisoner of Azkaban's dope as fuck. I like Prisoner of Azkaban.
Yeah, I like you said, from here on out, it's really hard to kind of put them together.
I think Prisoner of Azkaban marks a big, important change in the series of movies because they fully transition from being very kid-like and kid-friendly to like, okay, this is pretty like, the time travel. That's what I forgot about to say. So those are like my favorite things about this movie, like the way they do the time travel with Hermione's little necklace thing and like how that plays into the whole plot, and learning the Patronus charm and all that, and how that plays in, and how Harry has to like eventually like save himself basically with the Patronus charm and all that. Fucking love it, man.
So you get the
Prisoner of Azkaban slaps. I can't believe you have it in the bottom 3.
Well, I don't not like any of these, so they're all my number one.
That just surprises me because I'm a big fan of that movie.
I mean, but moving on from here, I would probably have to go with Deathly Hallows Part 1 as my 4th least liked movie.
So you had it kind of right around where I had it, because I had Deathly Hallows Part 1 as my 6th out of 8.
And then did you have Prisoner of Azkaban right after that?
No.
Oh, well, then we didn't have it exactly. But yeah,
this movie is what I'm saying. I mean,
Deathly Hallows Part 1, I love that movie because it sets you up for the second. When that movie ended, when it first came out, I'm like, I can't fucking wait. Like, I know you have it somewhere. Just play it. I don't care if it's unedited in 8 hours. Just play it. Let me watch the whole damn thing. There's just not a lot of substance to it in terms of...
I think it drags a little bit. It
drags on. Like, you just see them going different places, putting charms, and then they have, like, that aha moment every once in a while. They could have cut that movie down, or they could have put a lot more valuable information into it. So I put it just above Prisoner of Azkaban because of what it sets up.
Yeah.
Prisoner of Azkaban doesn't really set the Goblet of Fire up in any way.
For me, and I might be wrong about this, but I'm pretty sure Harry Potter was like the first big franchise to do this thing where their final movie was going to be in 2 parts.
It was either that or Twilight. Because it wasn't Twilight.
Yeah,
Part
those
1
were both
2.
around the same. Although I think Twilight came later. I think it was Harry Potter again. I could be wrong, but now it's become like a trend. It's happened several times since then, where they go,
which is
the last one is part
rush.
1 and part 2. I'm not really a big fan of that ever. I don't think it. I think anytime you do that, it ends up one of them being kind of like Deathly Hallows Part 1, where it just drags a little bit. Like one of them is always slower. And it's like, I get why you guys, you felt like you had a little too much information to cram into one long movie, but I'd rather you just make one like 3 hour and 20-minute movie than 2 hour-and-a-half movies that are like one of them's really slow and then the other one's jam-packed with all of the action. Plus you get, when you finish part one, normally part one is literally just like a placeholder until you get to the final climax, which just ends up being like a giant tease. I don't know. That always just really kind of bothers me. I think the only time that it's been done really well, and like these didn't, they're not explicitly marketed as a part one, part two, but they were originally planned this way and they act this way, is Avengers Infinity War, Avengers Endgame. Because those truly act as like a part one, part two of the same like fight against Thanos, end of the Infinity Saga.
Yeah.
And they were originally planning it as being Infinity War Part 1, Infinity War Part 2. But they didn't do that.
But I think for Harry Potter's sake...
For all the other ones, I end up being... One of them is always a little bit of a letdown to me.
I think that it would have been too long, though. I think there's too much valuable information in Part 1 of Deathly Hallows that you can't just jump into a Part 2. You learn what the Deathly Hallows are.
Yeah, but my thing is,
you also find multiple Horcruxes.
I'm not saying jump. I'm just saying make Deathly Hallows one long movie.
Right, but there's too much information that it would just be like, information overload. Like, because they could have done the same thing. Then when you go back to your Avengers thing, they could have made them all one movie.
No, because both of those movies are like 3 hours long.
Right, and both Deathly Hallows are like 3 hours long. Yeah, you could have shortened the first part probably to an hour 45, 2 hours. But still adding that, like Deathly Hallows Part 2, there's no part in there you could cut out to add in the first part. It would have probably had to have been a 4 to 4.5 hour long movie. Which, at that point in time, you're sitting there going, we can't, like, name a 4 hour movie that Titanic's probably the closest thing to, like, the longest movie in the history of time. But I wouldn't want to sit there for 4.5 hours. It would just get a little like, all right, this is getting long. Like,
I guess my only thing is, if it's part one, it ends up not really being able to stand on its own as a good individual installment. You know what I mean? Whereas if it was just like, say it was just called Deathly Hallows and then the last one was called Fight with Voldemort or whatever the fuck you want to call it, then Deathly Hallows, then Deathly Hallows stands on its own as like its own movie with its own contained story. And then the fight with Voldemort is the fight with Voldemort the whole time.
But the thing
Whereas like part one of this last installment ends up just being kind of like, oh yeah, that was fine. It was just more of a placeholder to get us to the final battle. You know what I mean?
But like I said, there's so much information in it. Like, both of those movies have the Deathly Hallows involved. You learn what they are in part one. Then you learn who had the Elder Wand in, Dumbledore. Then Voldemort gets it. You learn that there's an invisibility cloak, which Harry's had since year one.
Right.
And then you learn that there's this resurrection stone. But Harry doesn't know he has the resurrection stone yet, but you get introduced to it. But then you find out he has the resurrection stone, in part two. So it's like, it's the continuation of the full story. And I think there's just so much valuable information it had to be on its own. I can understand, like, where you can sit there and be like, yeah, but why name it the same thing, part 1 and 2? But I really don't think it does it an injustice to have it be a part 1 and part 2. I think you learn so much information in it. It's just kind of a slower movie. You get hyped up for like this big battle, and you just get more information, and you get set up for the big battle.
I'm not saying it's like terrible. I just don't think it's all that good. That's why I have it towards my lower rankings. And I think most series that have followed that formula of going, we're going to take the last one and split it into two, it always ends up with one of them not being as good. You know what I mean? Because one of them inevitably has to be kind of slow to like set up a bunch of stuff or wrap up a bunch of smaller plot lines that you don't really care as much about. You know what I mean? Like they end up spending time on stuff that's not as exciting, I guess.
Yeah, I think they could have shortened it for sure.
Twilight, by the way, I don't know if you've ever been forced to watch those. I have.
Yep.
That is the worst example of that ever happening. The part 1 of whatever the fuck it's called.
Like Breaking Dawn or something.
Yeah, the last one. Nothing happens.
Yeah.
And I mean that literally. Fucking nothing happens.
It's just like a 2-hour movie.
It's just like a honeymoon. Yeah. It's literally them on their honeymoon for like an entire movie.
And they have a baby.
Guys, this did not need to be an entire fucking movie. No. This could have been 20 minutes of the final movie.
I think that one was more of a money grab.
Well, they're all money grabs. I mean, we know why they do it.
But So yeah, that's my 4th on my list of the 8. Followed by that, I would have to probably say the Order of the Phoenix. Order of the Phoenix is I love that movie. There's a lot of bright spots in Order of the Phoenix, but then there's a lot of dark. You get the death of Sirius Black. You get.
So this is your what, number 5 or number 4?
This is number 5 because I went 2, 1, 3, 7 part 1, and now we're on 5. So 5 goes to 5.
Okay. Yeah. So far I had 8 was Chamber of Secrets, 7 was Sorcerer's Stone, 6 is Deathly Hallows Part 1, 5 for me is I had Half-Blood Prince.
Okay. So I have Order of the Phoenix, and I have Order of the Phoenix there just because I think Half-Blood Prince has a lot more fun to it, and it's really dark, but it gets you like really amped up. You're taught to hate Snape from the first movie, and then he kills Dumbledore, and it just makes you hate him even more. Then Harry and Dumbledore out there hunting Horcruxes, and then they go find one. Dumbledore pretty much dies finding it, and then you realize that it's a fake, and it just throws this huge knot into this whole adventure. So I'd have to say Half-Blood Prince would be mine after Order of the Phoenix. So I'd go Order of the Phoenix.
So I think we have those kind of flip-flopped.
I love Order of the Phoenix. I'm drawing a blank on her fucking name right now. No. The bitch in pink. That's what I'm going to call her.
Oh.
Fuck her.
Hang on. I almost had it. Dolores Umbridge?
Dolores Umbridge. Fuck Dolores Umbridge.
She's in which one? She
comes in the Order of the Phoenix.
Yeah.
She comes in because...
Okay. Yeah.
And you're first introduced to her when Harry's under trial for the Patronus charm that he produced in front of Neville.
That's right.
Because Neville was making fun of Harry for having a dream that Cedric died in Goblet of Fire. And you get introduced to her with Fudge, and Fudge has this huge thing with Dumbledore. And she's just a
That's
real
right.
royal
I kind of
bitch.
forgot about that. The main thing that stuck out to me in my memory about Order of the Phoenix is that Sirius ends up getting killed. Yep. That's what I always remember about that movie.
So I liked Order of the Phoenix. There's a lot of good information. You get the foundation of Harry's army, Dumbledore's army as you want to call it, but really who's going to follow Harry into this. Yeah. And ending up being the ultimate battle of their lifetime.
I think the only reason why I had it flip-flopped to where I have Half-Blood Prince lower than Order of the Phoenix is just because all I remember about Half-Blood Prince is just that it's like Snape's movie. It's Snape's movie. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, the whole thing's about Snape, I guess. I don't know. I wasn't really that stoked about that, to be honest.
I think it's interesting, though. I think you learn... Well, you learn it in part 2 of Deathly Hallows, because, like I said, you're taught to hate Snape this whole time. Yeah. In part 2 of Deathly Hallows, you go, holy shit, like, I've hated this guy along with Harry, Ron, and Hermione this whole time, when in reality he was doing everything to protect Harry. Yeah. Like it really...
So wasn't the thing... I always kind of forget this, because as I go back and rewatch these movies, I'm like, wait... So I remember Snape is like kind of the good guy at the end, but I don't remember how. So basically he just made a promise to like Harry's parents to protect Harry or something, and he's just been like deep undercover basically the whole time.
So Snape loved Lily, Harry's mom. Okay. Like he wanted to be with her.
Because I always forget what this backstory is.
So Snape and Lily became friends before they got to Hogwarts. Okay. So they knew each other because Lily was an outcast in her family because of her fucking, sister Petunia thinking she was a freak because she, could perform magic. She had magical powers. Right. She runs across Snape one day. They become really good friends before they go to Hogwarts. Okay. They're doing magic and stuff together. So they've established a relationship before going to Hogwarts. Then they get separated into different houses. And
then he gets kind of friend-zoned for James Potter, basically.
Right. And then they get married, but Snape never stopped loving Lily. Right. So he never took like another lover or whatever as you would want to call it. Yeah. He always loved her. So when he had found out that she had died, in part 2, he goes into the Potter household after Voldemort kills both Lily and James. Yeah. And holds her in his arms crying while Harry's in his crib crying.
Yeah.
So at that point, he made a pact with Dumbledore, save the kid, protect him. He's all she has left.
Okay.
And he goes, he has her eyes.
So as an extension of his love for Harry's mom,
yes.
Lily, he decided to protect Harry.
Right. So then
but by doing so, he becomes... Like, he goes, like, deep undercover, basically, and, like, works in consort with Voldemort and all the Death Eaters and appears to be a dick to Harry the whole time.
So in Order of the Phoenix, you get introduced to Snape being part of the Order.
Yeah.
Which no one at that time besides Dumbledore knows that Snape has to work for the Death Eaters and Voldemort. Dumbledore's the only one that knows this. The Order of the Phoenix trust him because he actually is doing good deeds for them.
Yeah.
But he's doing this, too, to build the trust with Voldemort by giving them information.
Right.
So, because then in part 1, when Harry moves... Or is it part 1? I think it's part 1. When they go to, they're going out to the... Why the fuck am I...
what are you trying to think of?
Where
the Weasley
Weasleys
house?
live. Yeah, it's...
That cool, like,
it's not the
straight
Groves
up
or
structure.
Something. Yeah, but they call it some location.
I don't know. I forget. I know what you're talking about, though.
I can't think of the word right now. But when they all go to leave for it, Snape says no. Snape just fucks everything up.
Yeah.
And he builds that trust with Voldemort because then he kills Dumbledore. And then you learn, you're like, oh, you bastard. Like, you killed... someone that trusted you, but then you learn that Dumbledore goes, I know you made this pact. You have to be the one that kills me.
Yeah.
So he does. And him killing Dumbledore shows Dumbledore his, where Snape's loyalty truly lied.
Shows Voldemort, yeah.
Right. Well, it shows both of them. Because
Yeah.
it shows Dumbledore, okay, I have to do everything to protect Harry.
Yeah.
So I have to kill you to protect him. Despite him not knowing anything.
Yeah. And it was also kind of a way to save Draco from having to, like... Because Draco didn't really want to be evil.
Draco was never a Death Eater.
Yeah. He just kind of thought he wanted to be, but he couldn't pull the trigger when the time came.
Which, speaking of a coward, dude, Draco's... Lucius Malfoy...
Lucius is definitely a fucking coward.
You get this, perception through 1 through 4 that he's like this...
Big badass.
Yeah. And then in 4, when Voldemort comes back, and he, like... sucks off their masks and they seem like they pass out or whatever. Yeah. I never really understood that part, but
as soon as Voldemort is back and starts,
like, and you, Lucius, and he does it. And he's like, my lord, and I'm like, oh, shut up, you bitch! You didn't want him to come back.
As soon as Voldemort shows up and starts swinging his big dick around, Lucius definitely
that's because you can't buy Voldemort. Yeah. And that's all Lucius has is money.
Yeah,
cocksucker.
Okay, well, thanks for explaining that because every time I start watching these, I'm like. Snape, for the longest time, is like, you're convinced he's a bad guy. And I'm like, I remember somehow he's good, but I don't remember how. Because he does a lot of bad shit.
So Harry's Patronus is a stag.
Yeah.
So in, American, it's a buck.
Yeah.
It's a male deer. His mom, I believe, was a doe. As well as Snape. Snape was a doe.
Oh, okay.
So... Yeah,
the dots connect.
Yeah, the dots all connect, and Snape's actually a good guy this whole time, despite us all sitting here going, you bastard.
Yeah,
like he was even trying to save Harry in the Sorcerer's Stone when Harry's broom was jinxed.
Right.
He was trying to do a counter curse, and you're like,
Hermione thinks he's cursing it, but he's actually trying to help.
And you only find that out when Professor Quirrell and Harry are about to fight in the bottom.
Yeah.
Or I don't even know where that is.
I don't know.
Because they go up, they're in the 3rd floor corridor, and then they fall down into that damn fucking tree, and then they fall out of the tree into another level, and then they go into a door where they gotta chase keys, and then they go into a massive chest room. Part.
Yeah.
And then once you go through the chest doors, he walked down a bunch of fucking stairs to find the mirror where Quirrell is, and then I'm like, where the fuck did you go in this castle?
Yeah.
You go through one little door where there's a massive dog, and then you fall through a trap door, and all of a sudden you're in Mordor fighting fucking Gollum and Thanos. So yeah, I had...
So I think we kind of have Half-Blood Prince and Order of the Phoenix right there in the middle of the pack, basically. Like,
yep.
like in between 1 and 8, basically.
So my second favorite is Goblet of Fire. In it, you could really interchange these two, but Goblet of Fire would be my second favorite, followed by Deathly Hallows Part 2 as my favorite.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I love the way that this wraps up. I love the way that it literally made me go, please don't end, please don't end. And then it ended, and I was like, fuck, it ended. What do I do?
So you already got to your favorite one. So your favorite one is which one?
Deathly Hallows Part 2 is my favorite, but it's extremely close with Goblet of Fire.
Okay.
Goblet of Fire has so much cool shit in it, but my biggest issue with it is all that cool shit like disappears. So you have the Bobatons Academy, like where the fuck are they during all of this shit? You know, where are all these people that come into the story that then...
I would like to see...
Because Fleur marries Bill, who is Ron's older brother, so she comes back into the story.
I would like to see more in the future of the Harry Potter world, because they're going to continue to make shows and movies in this world for a long time, I'm sure. But I would like to see where the other wizarding schools are, like some stories set at those places, because like you said, they show up in Goblet of Fire and then they just dip.
So I think Bobatons is technically, the female school is technically in France, I believe.
They seem French.
Yeah,
they're
blue
French.
and they have like that accent. And then where Crumb is from...
They seem Russian as fuck.
It's like Dormstrand or something. I'm butchering it, but I know what it is in my head. I just can't process words right now. It's Monday. But that's where he's from, and I think it's Bulgaria.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because in Goblet of Fire, you have the Irish and the Bulgarians in the Quidditch World Cup.
Oh, that's right.
So then you're like, well, where the fuck do the Irish go to school?
Yeah, like they all have a wizarding school,
like
presumably.
there's this massive wizarding world. It's not just... There's not just wizards in the UK. There's wizards everywhere is what you're learning. And then, you know...
What do you think the American wizarding schools look like?
I don't think there was one. Otherwise, you'd be introduced to it when Newt Scamander and everybody comes over, you know, when he's here in Fantastic Beasts, because he's in America.
Where do they go in America?
I think he's in New York.
Oh, they do go to New York. Yeah, that's right.
But I don't think there's a magical school that he would run into.
So maybe the British that's one thing they maintain control of is the wizarding world.
We took the new world from them.
Yeah,
they just said, "Fuck
we
you
have
guys,
the modern
we're not
world.
giving you any wizards, then, bitches." That was. I mean, Goblet of Fire is just. They're just so interchangeable for me. It's got to be like a 50-50.
Yeah. So really quickly, my last three, since you covered yours. Number 3 would be Deathly Hallows Part 2. Number 2, Prisoner of Azkaban. See, I had Prisoner of Azkaban like way up there.
Way up there.
And number 1. Goblet of Fire.
Dude,
Goblet of Fire is hands down my favorite one. It was my favorite book, and it's my favorite movie.
There's just so much, like, you go to the Quidditch World Cup, you get introduced into Death Eaters, because that's really when you first get introduced into Death Eaters.
Dude, can we talk about how dope that whole beginning of that movie is with the Quidditch World Cup and the tents and, like, this big party? It's like, literally like this soccer World Cup, but for Quidditch, and it's
in the middle of
fucking
nowhere.
Cool. I honestly could have watched a whole movie about that.
I think you truly get introduced into the full scale of magic that we get to deal with, because they pitch a tent. It's probably the size of this card table that we use.
And then
you
walk
go in
there,
there's like
and
8
it's like
rooms, a
mansion.
kitchen, living room, and you got to know, because it's a Weasley tent, that it's not the top of the line tent.
Exactly.
You got to, I wonder what the Malfoy's tent looked like.
Exactly. It's probably really dope.
Like, it was probably the size of this room we're in, and it was probably the size of a mansion.
Yeah, it looks like Dubai in there.
So you truly understand. You get to learn what the magic you're about to see the rest of the series is about. You also get introduced into Death Eaters, the Dark Mark. And then...
Dude, the dark mark in the sky at the end when, like, the Death Eaters torch the whole little shanty town of tents at the Quidditch World Cup. So fucking dope, dude. That's all at the beginning of the fucking movie, dude.
Well, and then they think... you get introduced into, like, the Aurs who go dark wizard hunting.
Right.
And they come in and they try and fucking pretty much end Harry, Hermione, and Ron. And then...
and you get introduced to... what are those things they use to teleport? What do they call those?
A port key?
Port key. You get introduced to port keys. Well, I guess they had port keys in the earlier movies, but...
no, not really. You had the flu powder is what he used in 2 as flu powder.
That's what I was thinking. So that's not a port key?
No, it's flu powder. So you have to be in a fireplace,
yeah,
and it takes you to another fireplace.
Okay, so that's not a port key. But then in Goblet of Fire, they introduced port keys where you can like grab on, and then you just appear wherever you're going.
And then in Half-Blood Prince, I believe you learn the Disapparate, or no, maybe it's in... I think it's Half-Blood Prince is the first time you get to see Harry do it, because that's when he does it with Dumbledore.
Yeah.
Like the beginning. He's like, grab my arm. And he
goes, that's right. That's right.
And he goes, and then he lands, and Dumbledore's like, most people usually throw up on their first time.
Yeah. I remember
Can't
that.
imagine why. But yeah, Goblet of Fire, you get introduced in all that. Then you get introduced into a full-bodied...
The Triwizard Tournament is so fucking cool.
Dude, okay, my biggest beef
also
with that,
super
though,
dangerous for fucking students to be going through. It's like
swimming through the Black Lake.
It's like gladiator combat, but for fucking like sophomores in high
go
school.
steal this egg from a dragon.
From a fucking full-on dragon that will burn and murder you if you don't get out of the way.
Got this.
Yeah, and everyone
You
just
walk
sits
out
around
there
and cheers like it's watching fucking one-on-one or something. Like, I don't know.
And then they're like, oh, you did that? Now you got to hold your breath for a fucking hour.
Yeah.
We drowned one of your friends, and you got to go save them
And
somewhere in this massive black
Isn't it just
lake.
up to them, too? Like, they got to figure out how they can do it. Like, they don't tell them how to, like, hold their breath
no, they're just
underwater.
like, you gotta go. You have an hour time limit.
Yeah,
And you got to find your friend.
Dude,
good fucking
that
luck.
movie is so fucking good. It's hands down my favorite one of the entire
My biggest
series.
beef with it, though, is the maze at the end. That could have been such a cooler task. They're running through a maze. Like, everything goes, you got a bewitched Crumb, who then, I think he attacks Fleur, and then Harry sends up the red sparks, and she gets taken out, and then Crumb's bewitched, and him and Cedric then duel. And then Cedric wins, and then Harry and Cedric duel as they run, and then it's a fucking port key that takes him into a graveyard where you get introduced into a full-bodied fucking Voldemort.
I think that was like the great cherry on top of an already dope movie is you finally get Voldemort in the flesh.
Yep.
Like, he's finally here, and you're like, oh, fuck, like, here's the bad guy. You know what I mean?
I think one thing they could have done... I don't know if you ever picked up on it with, like, the Barty Crouch Jr., like, his little... like his tongue licking motion.
Yeah. Because he's pretending to be Mad-Eye Moody the whole time, right?
I think they
also hands down the coolest teacher in my opinion.
Oh yeah, I think they
Mad-Eye's
could
fucking
have.
dope.
I think they could have hid his little, like, twitch
His
a
twitch.
little better.
Yeah.
Because if you pay attention, you pick up on that after you see him in.
You see the flashback
trial.
scene or whatever.
Yeah, you pick up on it right away. You're like, oh, so Professor Moody isn't. He's the one setting everything up.
Yeah.
And they try and put the blame on. What's his name? The headmaster for Igor Karkaroff.
Yeah.
The headmaster for
Yeah.
the Darmstrong or whatever the fucking school
Yeah.
is. I know I'm butchering it. I know what I want to say. I just fucking am butchering
Good
it.
job on the fucking name. Igor, what's his name? Igor Karkaroff?
Karkaroff.
That was a good pull.
But
I did not remember that was his
They make
name.
it seem like he's the one setting everything up.
Right. Because he looks evil as fuck. That guy looks like
and he's a Death Eater.
Right, yeah.
But it's one of those you see, like, as soon as I saw the tongue flicker, I was like, okay, whoever
He almost
Barty
has
Crouch
like
Jr. is
the
playing.
He almost has the Heath Ledger Joker, like the constantly licking the lips thing.
Yeah.
You know that he does. Like, it's like this little thing, this little twitch.
I don't know, it's a weird twitch, but I picked up on that quickly, and I'm like, they could have hid that a little bit better and made you keep guessing between the two.
Yeah.
Because they really give it away when Professor Moody turns and he goes with his finger to tell him which way to go at the very end.
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know if you
In the
catch on to
maze.
that, in the maze.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to get him to go into the... And then, when Harry comes back and Moody takes him up into, like, his office or whatever, he's like, so what was the graveyard like? What were all... And he's like, I didn't say anything about a graveyard. And it's like, you could have hid this so much better and, like, kind of had a little bit more of, like, a spark with this scene.
I'm glad they brought the real Moody back in the later movies and made him a big part of what was going on, because he's such a great character.
Dude, he's such a good character. I just wish he didn't die.
Yeah.
I wish he was at the Battle of Hogwarts, and if he died at the Battle of Hogwarts, because I think that would have been, like...
He's just so, like, interesting. He's got this weird fake eye thing. He's got this... Doesn't he have, like, a fake leg and this big, like
the peg leg,
walking cane thing? That he looks like a pirate who's, like, a wizard, and he's, like...
Well, he does have that ship that
he's like
he
this
came
big,
in on.
burly guy. He's kind of like Hagrid in a way, where he's, like, very protective of Harry, and kind of acts as, like, a father figure to Harry and all this kind of stuff.
He's like the old school guy.
He's fucking great, dude. I love him.
He has, like, no emotion.
Yeah.
He's like, great. Let's fucking
Right, yeah.
go.
He's all business all the time. Yeah, he's like, we can't waste any time with all this fucking sappiness.
Oh, yeah. His character, I just wish they didn't kill off. I guess you can't really say as soon. He dies in the Deathly Hallows, so it's...
Yeah.
But I wish he would have made it to the Battle of Hogwarts and, like, done something cool.
Dude, the more we're talking about this, I texted you today, I really want to go on a rewatch, but I am planning on doing it. I really want to reread the books. I remember as a kid reading them just being so amazed and enthralled. Like, they are fucking truly, for lack of a better word, magical. Like, they are fucking magical.
One of my things, like, I'm not a big reader, and for these, for instance, I watched the movies before I read the books.
Okay.
Because when you read the books and then you go watch the movie, you go, Fred's going to die right here. Dumbledore dies in this movie. Just let me watch the movie and then I'm going to read the book. For most of them. Some of them I read the books before because, I had the book way before the movie came out.
I think I may have seen the first couple of movies before I started reading the books, although I'm not remembering that very clearly.
You probably weren't reading Harry Potter at 7.
Yeah, and then I think as the movies came out, I then went back and read the beginning of the series, and then I was reading the books before the movies were coming out.
Dude, I remember
she was ahead of the movies, and so you could read like Goblet of Fire while Chamber of Secrets.
These book releases were like big. I remember one day going with my dad to the Barnes and Noble, just up the street from me now.
It was like an event.
And it was, you'd walk in there and you're like, I hope they have one. You go and it's just boxes in the back.
Yeah.
And you go up and they're like, would you like a paper copy or a hard copy? And I'm like, give me that hard copy.
I feel bad for any other poor author who was trying to promote a book during that time because they didn't stand a fucking chance.
Dude, I'll have to grab those books and some of my parents' house because I really want to read them.
They're great, man.
Too.
Did I tell you that I was watching this? So as I was reading the Game of Thrones books and like right after I had watched the show, I was watching this interview where Stephen King and George R.R. Martin were both at this like conference thing, and they were having this conversation in front of a big panel and all this kind of stuff. And Stephen King was talking about like, because they're both probably two of the most famous, most well-known authors that have ever lived. And have written some incredibly popular stories and series.
I don't get how Stephen King got popular. The shit he writes is just so fucking random. Fucked up.
He's been popular for decades. That guy's been an insanely popular author for decades. But I think George R.R. Martin was asking him about, because George R.R. Martin right now is under all of this pressure to release book 6 and book 7 of his series, A Song of Ice and Fire. Yeah, and he was asking Stephen King about like pressure and all that kind of stuff, about like starting something and building it into this thing that then becomes way, way, way bigger than you ever thought it was going to be. And then having all these people like, when's the next book coming out? When's the next book coming out? And Stephen King was like, I don't think either of us compare to the pressure that J.K. Rowling was under when the last Harry Potter book was supposed to be coming out. Like, when she was having to write the finale to this series that had become literally a global phenomenon, she was under so much fucking pressure to make that a satisfying ending to that series. And for it to come out promptly. People would not have been happy if, what was it? Order of the Phoenix, I think, or was it Half-Blood Prince that was right before Deathly Hallows? It's Half-Blood Prince, right?
Half-Blood Prince is
people would not have been happy if Half-Blood Prince had come out and then 10 years went by before they got Deathly Hallows. They would have fucking lost their minds. Yeah. So she not only had to like release that in a prompt fashion, but she had to make it a satisfying conclusion, which she did. I mean, props to her. She did. She fucking knocked it out of the park.
Going back to my...
He was like, dude, the pressure that she had to have been under, like, you can't even imagine.
Right. Well, going back to my point, earlier is she had to have had most of this written before she got them published. Because, I know we had discussed a little bit, but 97, 98, 99, 2000, 2003, 2005, and 2007. 10 years, she released 7 books. That's a year and a half to write each of these stories.
Yeah.
And get it published, edited, do all of the behind the scenes shit. I mean, how long did it take you to get your short stories?
It takes a long time.
So she had to have had these written.
I don't think she had the whole. I think she had an idea.
Maybe not all of them, but she had to have had a big chunk
of where the story. I think here's probably what happened. And again, this is all like fucking hearsay. Like, who knows what her plan was. But she probably
wrote get her on here as a guest one day.
If we're big enough to get J.K. Rowling on, that would be fucking awesome. She probably wrote the first one, and all she wanted to do was get the first one published. And then the first one gets published and becomes successful. And then they're like, do you have any more? And she's like, yeah, sure, I got an idea for a sequel, whatever. Writes a sequel. And then they're like, then it becomes gigantic. And they're like, okay, we want you to turn this into maybe she had an idea for a trilogy or something, you know, or like 4 books. And then they're like, this thing's fucking huge, keep it coming. And she's like, okay, well, maybe I can stretch this out into like a 7-year-long story, you know, a 7-book-long story.
I'm going to send her an email and ask.
I'm sure you could find
and
stuff.
For the Just Browsing podcast, we have a question. We're debating on your book choice for
and here's
Harry Potters.
To your point about like having stuff pre-written. By the time the first one is like in bookstores, she's probably already done with the second one or getting close to being done with the second one. And then so on and so forth. You know what I mean? Like by the time Chamber of Secrets is in Barnes and Noble for you to go buy, she's almost done with book 3 at that point. Well, like and that's how far ahead of the process she is in terms of writing it to when it like gets published and in a bookstore for you to purchase. Well, it's a long gap between like when she's done typing to when you're reading it. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's why I want to figure out like her whole publication, you know, the whole thing, because that to me, having 7, you know, wildly successful books,
just unfathomably successful.
It just doesn't
books.
make sense how she could have, you know, done that. Does she has podcasts?
Dude, she's turned this thing into an industry. She has like a full-on industry. And now, do you want to talk a little bit about the Fantastic Beasts movies while we're at it?
Not the biggest fan, but I definitely, you know,
still interested.
You're a Harry Potter guy, it's a Harry Potter. You know, they're not. I don't call them prequels because they're not necessarily a true prequel.
It just happened before the first.
There's stories inside. So there's stories that Harry reads in the movies and in the books, but they're true stories. Yeah. So they're telling the story of a story inside of the story.
Yeah,
a lot of stories.
I mean, I think the only real term for it would be a prequel because all of the events that you're seeing are happening prior to the first Harry Potter movie.
But a lot of them, besides. Most of them don't have any effect on Harry Potter itself.
Although they do introduce, like, you know, obviously Dumbledore is a big part of them. Yep. They introduce the Sorcerer's Stone in those.
I mean, you get introduced, like, the Elder Wand.
The Elder Wand.
But like,
so there's
Newt
seeds
Scamander,
for,
like he's really a nobody in terms of Harry Potter.
Right.
He's just the explorer.
He's just kind of casually
mentioned,
yeah.
So, I like him. I'm not. I don't know. My brain, when it was like, you know, from J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, you go, this shit's about to be, you know, the same wizarding world, which it is, but it's not. You know, we went and saw them both together, I'm pretty sure. And I was like jumping off my seat, and then I left, and I was like, it was good, but
wasn't quite as amazing as
I was thinking we were going to be more under a Harry Potter guidance of it instead of a different typed story.
Yeah.
They're good, they're entertaining, but they're not. They'll never compete with. They're kind of like The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Mm-hmm. The Hobbit is good; it's very entertaining,
but it's never going to reach the level.
Never going to reach the level of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah,
there's a lot of good info in it, but it's just never going to reach the level of.
They're almost kind of comparable to like the Star Wars spin-off movies, to where you're like I like watching this because it's Star Wars, it's that world, but it's also not a main Star Wars installment. You know what I mean? Like there's just something about it where you're like, you know, Luke's not in it, Leia's not in it. Like it's just not quite the same. It's still I'm still interested because it's the same world that I'm very fond of, but like
you're like
doesn't quite get there. Yeah. Doesn't quite get there.
Yeah, I mean, I like them. I'm, you know, they still have one more to go.
I think the first one I like a lot more than the second one they released. That Crimes of Grindelwald.
Yep.
I was a little bit disappointed in Crimes of Grindelwald. I'll be completely honest. I didn't think it was as good as I thought it was. They
hype it up to be like this, you know, pretty dark. You know, kind of a dark wizard before, because I think this all would happen before Voldemort.
Yeah.
You know, back when Dumbledore was young. So it's just one of those. Yeah, I really enjoy them, but I'm not gonna jump through hoops to watch them. I would much rather watch
and I think,
Harry Potter without even worrying about. Like if I'm gonna do a Harry Potter marathon when all 3 of those movies are released, I'm watching Harry Potter. I'm not gonna be like I gotta watch, these 3. Like Star Wars, at least their stories are interjectable into the series. You could watch the first 3, then you could watch. Well, I guess you got to watch Rogue One, then you watch A New Hope.
Right.
And then, you can watch the rest. Solo's kind of the better comparison to Fantastic Beasts because it's about something in the story, but not a story part. So, I don't know. I like them. They're entertaining, but...
I think I maybe covered this a little bit when we talked about our movie franchises, but it seemed a little weird to me that the first one, it's Fantastic Beasts, and it's all about,
and where to find
it's kind of like this sense of wonder of like Newt Scamander chasing down like these magical beasts and creatures in the world. He's kind of like a zoologist or something in our world, but he's just in the wizarding world. So I was like, okay, it's a cool vibe. I get it. And then the second one comes out, and it's called Fantastic Beasts: The Crimes of Grindelwald. And then the tone is like totally shifted because there's not really so much more of like the magical creatures part of it, and it's more like, oh, here's this like Voldemort-esque guy. And I don't know why they didn't just treat it as something totally separate than like the Fantastic Beasts umbrella and just go like The Crimes of Grindelwald.
So is the beast in that Grindelwald? Like yeah, I don't get it. It's just
it
like
seems
another
like
story.
It doesn't fit the Fantastic Beasts umbrella to me. I don't, just the way when you watch that movie, you're like, okay. I mean, I don't really get why it's called Fantastic Beasts.
Yeah, they could have easily just said, The Crimes of Grindelwald as the new movie, and been like, it's a sequel to Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, because Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them makes complete sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I get what you're saying.
Yeah. It just seems like, I don't know what they're gonna call the third one, but it just seems like tonally, it's kind of all over the place so far. The third one's going to do really bad
if they don't recast Johnny Depp.
Oh, dude, I really hope he's great as Grindelwald. He's, like, perfect for that character.
But then he got, bullshitted out of a career because, I won't get into it, but...
Yeah, that's a whole other...
He got fucking bullshitted out of shit because he's a guy. I'll just say it that way without getting political.
Yeah. Well... Those are my rankings. Should we list them off one more time for the folks still listening?
For those of you still listening to the greatest episode ever released. No, so I had...
Do you want to just go 1 through 8?
Yeah, so my number 1 was Part 2, Deathly Hallows.
Okay.
My number 2 was Goblet of Fire. My number 3 was Half-Blood Prince. My number 4 was Order of the Phoenix. 5 was Deathly Hallows. 6 was Prisoner of Azkaban. 7 was Sorcerer's Stone. And 8 was Chamber of Secrets.
Yeah, and then I had...
I believe I got that right.
I think you're right.
They're all number 1 in my book.
I had number 1, Goblet of Fire. Number 2, Prisoner of Azkaban. Number 3, Deathly Hallows Part 2. Number 4, Order of the Phoenix. Number 5, Half-Blood Prince. Number 6, Deathly Hallows Part 1. Number 7, Sorcerer's Stone. And number 8, Chamber of Secrets.
So the real winner is all of us that enjoy Harry Potter. Because they're all fucking great.
Dude, I'll just go ahead and say it. And like I've been saying it ever since we've been trying to, plan a Harry Potter episode on our schedule. I've had a great time talking about Harry Potter, man. I fucking love Harry Potter. I know you and I kind of feud over like the Harry Potter versus Star Wars thing, and I'm always just going to choose Star Wars over that, and you're always going to choose Harry Potter. But I really like Harry Potter. Like, I mean, if Star Wars didn't exist, that might be like my favorite movie franchise. I fucking love Harry Potter.
I mean, you need to go home and really look in the mirror and think to yourself, did I make the right decision with Star Wars? We could always redo the movie brackets.
No, I'm sticking with my choices.
God, loser.
But yeah, I'm a big fan of the books. I'm a big fan of the movies. I like to kind of I don't rewatch them near as often as you do, but I like to maybe once a year, once every 2 years, I'll go through a rewatch of all the movies and just binge them. They're fucking fun, man. Great movies.
Same.
Yeah, same. Once every 2 weeks, maybe for you.
That's probably.
How many times have you watched them this year? We're in July. How many times have you watched them?
4 or 5.
All the way through. 4 or 5 times.
This will either be 5 or 6.
Fucking anime.
But like I said, I sit at home and work, so that's my background. That's my music while I'm working.
Okay.
So I got through, 2.5 movies while working today.
Yeah, see, again, as we covered at the top of the podcast, I can't do that. It has to be music for me, or else I can't fucking focus on
so
anything.
yeah, when I rewatch them, like I said, though, it's playing in my head. That's why I could think, and I just love them. Because then I can look up and I know exactly where I'm at. I'm like, oh, this is the line that just was said. I know in like 30 seconds is when I need to look at the TV for 30 seconds to see the action, and then I can look away.
Yeah.
And that's also why my dog's name is Luna, because of Luna Lovegood. Although
really?
she's really like a nice, beautiful character in the story. My dog's a beautiful psychopath that just has way too much energy.
Yeah. She's more of a Bellatrix Lestrange.
She's more of a, she needs to learn how to calm down, because when she's calm and sleeping in the hallway,
I was going to say, she's been good the last 30 minutes or so, but... All right, man.
Well,
I've had a good time. You ready to wrap this up?
Yeah, everyone that's still around, thanks for supporting us. We really appreciate all of it, and hopefully you enjoyed the Harry Potter discussion.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody.
I think I don't want to say what we're going to do next week, because we kind of have just been coming up with these ideas a couple days before.
Yeah.
So stay tuned. Follow our socials. We'll try and update them more to give you a heads up if you want to listen or not. But come by the Twitch stream at twitch.tv/the Just Browsin podcast if you want to see us live, and then discuss with us. Fill out your Marvel bracket. Send those in to us so we can compile more results on a result page. And just thanks for all the support, and we'll be back next week with another episode.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody. It's been a little hiatus, but we're glad to be back and talk a little Harry Potter. So
we'll catch you later.
Till next time. Sweet.
No, it's just the stream. But since no one's in here, we're just gonna say,
in that bitch.
Good. Bye.
That guy has shit.
Oh well, he's got a shit.